At 60, she disappeared on the same day she retired. At 60, after a lifetime of work, she was supposed to finally rest. The town celebrated her retirement, friends gathered, and her family prepared a dinner in her honor. But that night, while everyone was distracted, she quietly vanished. And what happened on the day of her retirement shocked the entire community forever. People searched for her through the narrow streets, the church bells rang an alarm, and neighbors whispered, how could she disappear on the very day she was supposed to celebrate? And that mystery became the beginning of a story no one could believe. Some thought she had been kidnapped, others that she had run away with a secret lover. But the truth, buried beneath decades of silence, was far more painful. And every revelation that followed uncovered secrets hidden for a lifetime. This is the story of a woman who carried family secrets, shocking revelations, and one last wish that could not be silenced. And every chapter will take you deeper into her mystery. The day of celebration, the town of San Andres, in the Galician coast of Spain, was buzzing with celebration. It was the day of Maria's retirement, a woman who had spent more than 40 years working in the local school kitchen. And everyone expected that night to be one of joy, not mystery. Her children had organized a dinner in her honor, the mayor had sent flowers, and the church bells rang as a symbol of respect for her years of dedication. But what no one imagined was that this day would be remembered for something else entirely. Maria smiled as she greeted her neighbors, but behind her eyes there was a strange shadow, as if her heart carried a weight too heavy for words. And that look would later become the detail that everyone recalled. She thanked her family for the dinner, hugged her grandchildren, and raised a toast. Today marks the end of one life and the beginning of another, she said, with a trembling voice. And those words sounded more like a farewell than a celebration. As the laughter filled the small dining room, Maria slipped away to her bedroom for a quick rest, but that rest was only the beginning of her disappearance. When the guests went looking for her, the bed was empty, the window was open, and her shoes were gone. And that was the moment when panic began to spread. Neighbors searched the streets, calling her name. Some went to the docks, others to the church, but there was no sign of her. And the absence of answers only deepened the fear. Her children argued nervously. She would never leave us without a word, one said. Unless she was hiding something all along, another whispered. And suspicion began to take root in the family itself. By midnight, the police were alerted, and the entire town was awake. An old woman vanished on the day she was supposed to rest, and the mystery was now the talk of every corner of San Andres. What no one knew yet was that Maria's disappearance was tied to a secret she had kept for decades. And uncovering that secret would change the family forever. The first clues at dawn, a fisherman claimed he had seen Maria walking toward the cliffs near the sea, holding a small suitcase. And this sighting became the first real clue in the investigation. Her children rushed to the cliffs, shouting her name into the roaring waves, but only the wind replied. And each unanswered call fed the fear that she might be gone forever. Inside the suitcase, police later found not clothes, but letters, dozens of them written in faded ink, all addressed to the same man, Antonio, and that discovery left the family speechless. Her eldest son shouted, "Who is Antonio?" Father's name was Ramon. Who was she writing to all these years? And his rage masked a deeper wound, the fear that their mother's life had been a lie. The youngest daughter, tears streaming down her face, whispered, maybe that's why she left, to tell us the truth she couldn't speak here. And for the first time, the family realized the disappearance was not random. The neighbors, always quick to gossip, now had fuel for their whispers. Maria had another life, they murmured. And the shame of scandal pressed even harder on the family's pride. But for the children, It wasn't either town's judgment that hurt most, it was the realization that they never truly knew their mother. And that pain was heavier than any rumor could ever be. The police decided to keep searching the coastline, convinced she had left something hidden there. And that decision would soon uncover more than anyone expected. In one of the letters María had written, "When I retire, I will finally keep my promise," and those words became the puzzle piece that no one could ignore. What promise to whom? And why only after retirement? And with these questions, the mystery only deepened. The family divided. The revelation of the letters shattered the unity of Maria's children. Some insisted she had betrayed their father's memory, others defended her right to have secrets. And the arguments turned into open wounds. Her eldest son screamed, "She lied to us our whole lives. She abandoned us the same way she abandoned this house," and his anger turned into a wall of resentment. The youngest daughter tried to calm him. Maybe she was protecting us. Maybe the truth was too heavy for children, and her compassion became the only thread holding the family together. But the middle child, who had always felt invisible, now said if she had another man, then everything we believed was false, and his bitterness poisoned the air of every conversation. As the investigation continued, the police confirmed the letters spanned more than 30 years. And that timeline meant Maria's secret had lived longer than many marriages in the village. The town grew restless. Old neighbors recalled whispers of a man who once visited during the festivals, a man who vanished as suddenly as he appeared. And every rumor became another piece of speculation. The priest of the local church even warned, secrets destroy families more than sins ever could. And his words echoed like a prophecy that was now unfolding. The children stopped speaking to each other for days. Each carried their own interpretation of the truth. And in silence, the family was breaking apart. At night, the youngest daughter prayed, "Mother, wherever you are, come back before we destroy each other." And that prayer became her only hope. But Maria's trail was just beginning to be uncovered, and what awaited them was far more shocking than a secret lover. And the next clue would leave the entire family stunned. The hidden diary. Days after Maria's disappearance, her youngest daughter searched the old wooden chest in her mother's bedroom. Beneath folded sheets and photographs, she found a leather-bound diary. And this discovery would open a door no one was prepared to walk through. The diary began in her 20s, long before she married Ramon. It spoke of dreams, forbidden meetings, and a love that was never allowed to bloom. And suddenly, Antonio was no longer a shadow, but a presence in her past. Each page revealed more: stolen kisses at the festival, promises whispered by the sea, and letters exchanged in secrecy. And every line felt like a confession written for the family she left behind. The daughter clutched the diary to her chest, torn between protecting her mother's memory and exposing the truth. And that conflict mirrored the one now dividing the family. When the brothers found out, they demanded to read it. Voices rose, accusations flew, and unity crumbled further. And in their fight, the diary became a weapon rather than a guide. The eldest son slammed his fist on the table. She betrayed father with every word she wrote, and his fury poisoned even the memory of their home. But the daughter defended her mother. No, she sacrificed her happiness to keep us safe. Can't you see? And her plea was a fragile shield against the storm of anger. That night, she locked the diary away, afraid of what it could do to the family. And in her silence, she carried the burden of her mother's voice. Yet one entry in the diary stood out above all. "When I retire, I will keep the promise we made under the old oak tree." And that single line became the clue that would guide the next search. The oak tree stood on the outskirts of San Andres, overlooking the cliffs where sea and sky met. and everyone knew that was where they had to go next. The oak tree at dawn, the family walked together to the ancient oak tree, standing tall and proud against the Atlantic winds. And every step felt like walking deeper into Maria's hidden life. Carved into the bark were two initials, M and A. The letters had faded with time, but their meaning was undeniable. And the sight made the children's hearts pound with disbelief. Beneath the roots, freshly disturbed soil suggested something had been buried recently. The police dug carefully until they uncovered a small metal box. And the air grew thick with anticipation as it was opened. Inside were more letters, but these were different. They were not written to Antonio, they were from him. And for the first time, Maria's voice was answered. Maria, one letter read, "If life does not let us be together, I will wait until the day you are free. Promise me that when you retire, we will not waste another moment," and the words carried decades of longing in a few lines. The youngest daughter cried as she read, "Mother didn't leave us. She went to fulfill a promise," and suddenly her disappearance took on a new meaning. But the eldest son growled, "No. She abandoned us for a man long dead or gone. She chose him over us," and the bitterness split the family deeper than before. The police confirmed Antonio had once lived in San Andres, but vanished mysteriously in the 1980s. And that mystery now resurfaced with Maria's disappearance. The oak tree, once a symbol of innocence, was now the witness to decades of forbidden love. And the family could no longer deny that Maria's story was bigger than they ever imagined. They returned home with the box, but their questions only multiplied. And the answers waited in places darker than they expected. The town remembers rumors spread faster than the sea wind. The whole town now whispered about Maria and Antonio. And with each whisper, the family's shame grew heavier. An old woman in the market approached the youngest daughter. "I remember Antonio. He was not a bad man, but fate was cruel. They were in love, but her parents forced her to marry Ramon, and those words turned the scandal into tragedy." The daughter returned home with tears. She never betrayed father. She was forced into a life she never chose, and her truth collided with her brother's anger. The eldest son spat back, "If she loved him, why did she have us? Why pretend all these years?" And his voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. Neighbors recalled how Antonio had been seen one last time, leaving on a fishing boat and never returning. Some said he drowned, others said he fled. And the mystery only deepened. The police now considered that Maria had gone searching for his remains or his family. And the search expanded beyond San Andres. The church grew uneasy. The priest warned the children, "The truth can heal or destroy, but it must be faced," and his counsel echoed in their hearts. The daughter clung to the diary. "Mother's story is not shame. It's sacrifice. We must honor it," and her determination planted a fragile seed of hope. But the eldest son declared, "If she chose Antonio, then she is no longer our mother." And those words left a wound no reconciliation could yet heal. The family was collapsing, but Maria's trail had not gone cold. And the next clue would take them further from home than ever before. The journey begins. The police traced Antonio's last known location to a fishing village miles away. The family agreed to travel there, even as tension simmered among them. And the road became a battlefield of silence and resentment. Along the way, the youngest daughter whispered to her siblings, "We are not here to judge her. We are here to find her," and her words became the fragile compass guiding their steps. The village welcomed them with curiosity. Old fishermen recalled a stranger who lived among them decades ago, tall, dark-haired, always looking out to sea. And their descriptions matched Antonio perfectly. One fisherman swore he saw Antonio just before a storm dragged his boat into the waves. He never came back, the man said. And his testimony fueled both despair and hope. If Antonio had died, why did Maria vanish now? Had she discovered something new? And the questions multiplied with no clear answer. The family rented a small inn, determined to continue searching. But each night, arguments flared again, reopening wounds. And the walls of their rooms echoed with both grief and rage. The daughter found solace by the sea, clutching the diary and whispering to her absent mother. And her faith kept the search alive. One evening, a local handed them an old photograph, Antonio, younger, standing with Maria at a festival decades ago. And proof of their love stared back from faded ink. The eldest son crumpled the photo in fury, but deep inside, he too felt the ache of truth. And his denial was cracking under the weight of evidence. That night, the daughter swore to herself, "I will not stop until I find her. Alive or not, I will bring her truth home," and that vow set the tone for what was to come. The letter that changed everything in the inn where they stayed. The youngest daughter opened a hidden pocket in the diary and discovered a folded letter sealed with wax. And this secret letter would shift the entire search. It was dated only weeks before Maria's disappearance. It read, "My beloved, I never stopped waiting. If you read this, come to the lighthouse at Cabo Ortegal when you are free," and those words set fire to the family's determination. The lighthouse keeper confirmed that an elderly woman had indeed visited, asking questions about old records of fishermen lost at sea. And the clue proved Maria was alive when she left. The family argued once again. Some said she went to find Antonio, others believed she went to say goodbye to his ghost. And the division kept widening as the mystery deepened. The daughter pleaded, "Please, stop fighting. Every step we take together brings us closer to her," and her voice became the only fragile glue holding them as one. The eldest son, tired and broken, muttered, "If she wants to be found, she will show herself. Maybe she doesn't want us anymore," and his bitterness threatened to end the search entirely. But then the innkeeper, overhearing them, whispered, "If she followed Antonio's letters, then her journey has only just begun," and that remark revived a fragile hope. The diary, the letters, the carved tree all pointed to a love unfinished, a promise never fulfilled. And now, the family was caught between shame and revelation. The daughter looked at her siblings and said, "We cannot stop here. If we give up now, we will never know the truth," and her determination sparked the next move. That night, she wrote in her journal, "If my mother left everything behind, it was not to betray us, it was to find peace," and her words became a quiet prayer for strength. Secret in the lighthouse at Cabo Ortegal, the lighthouse stood tall against crashing waves. The keeper led them inside, where dusty logs recorded decades of storms and tragedies at sea. And within those pages lay fragments of Maria's story. One entry mentioned a man named Antonio, whose boat had gone missing in 1982. The note said his companion, a woman, begged us to keep hope, and that woman could only have been Maria. The daughter's hand shook as she read. "She came here before. She's been searching all her life." And the family realized her disappearance was not sudden, but the final step in a long journey. The eldest son, silent now, stared out the lighthouse window. "She loved him more than she ever loved us," he whispered. And his pain cracked through his anger. But the daughter replied, "No, she loved us enough to stay all those years. Now she loves herself enough to go," and her words brought tears to everyone's eyes. The keeper gave them another clue. Weeks ago, she asked about records of fishermen who survived but changed their names. And that hint opened a shocking possibility Antonio might not have died. The idea electrified the room. Could it be that Maria was searching not for a memory but for a living man? And that possibility gave the mystery new life. They scoured the records, but many were incomplete, eaten away by time and damp. And frustration clawed at their fragile hope. Still, the daughter whispered, if she believes he lived, then we must believe too, and her faith lit the path forward. As they left the lighthouse, the wind howled like a voice calling from the sea. And in that echo, they felt closer to Maria than ever before. The turning point back at the inn, tensions rose again. The brothers sat apart, one lost in anger, the other in silence. The daughter finally stood up and shouted, "This isn't only her story, it's ours too," and her words forced them to listen. She continued, "We've lived in her shadow, but now we must choose. Will we let secrets destroy us, or will we find her together?" And her challenge cut through the silence. The middle brother nodded reluctantly. "Maybe finding her will help us find ourselves." And for the first time, unity flickered in their hearts. That night, they spread the letters and diary across the table like pieces of a puzzle. And hope returned as they traced every clue again. Suddenly, the daughter looked at them and said, "If this story has kept you here, following every chapter with us, then don't forget you are part of this family. Subscribe to our channel, because your support allows us to keep telling these emotional stories and uncovering truths that touch the heart." And this was the moment where fiction and reality touched, inviting the audience to join. The brothers looked at her strangely, but she smiled. It matters. Stories are only alive if shared, and her conviction reached beyond the walls of that room. The eldest brother finally said, "Then let's share her truth whether it hurts or heals," and his words became the start of reconciliation. As they packed for the next stage of the search, the daughter whispered, "Tomorrow, we follow her footsteps into the unknown," and her vow carried the weight of destiny. The sea outside roared louder than ever, as if warning them that answers would not come easily. And the storm that awaited was not only in the waves, but in their hearts. But now, for the first time, they were united not by certainty, but by a shared determination. And that fragile unity would be tested in ways they could not imagine. The trail of the past the family's search led them to the archives of a nearby coastal town. Old census papers showed that Antonio had once registered there under a false name. And this revelation reignited the fire of possibility. The daughter trembled as she whispered, if he survived, maybe he built a new life. And her hope pulled the family deeper into the mystery. The record showed a fisherman named Andres who appeared suddenly in 1983, living quietly and dying only a few years before Maria's retirement. And the puzzle pieces began to align. The eldest son clenched his fists. "So she left us for a dead man's grave," and his anger clashed again with the fragile unity they had built. But the daughter replied, "No, she left us to honor the promise she once made." That's not betrayal, it's closure, and her compassion softened even the hardest heart. The villagers recalled Maria visiting frequently in recent years, always asking about Andres. And every memory confirmed she had been preparing for this journey for decades. The family realized that Maria's disappearance wasn't a sudden, it was the final chapter of a story she had carried in silence. And that understanding brought them closer to her heart. They stood by the sea where Andres had lived, imagining their mother walking there in solitude. And the image filled them with both sorrow and peace. The daughter placed a flower in the waves. She came here to say goodbye. And in that moment, the mystery began to unravel. But one last surprise still awaited them, hidden in a letter Maria had left behind. And its contents would change everything once more. The last letter days later, the police delivered a sealed envelope found in Maria's belongings at the inn. It was addressed to her children, and with trembling hands, they opened it together. "My dear children," it began, "I did not leave you out of anger or betrayal. I left because I needed to honor the part of me I buried long ago," and her words poured over them like both balm and fire. She confessed that Antonio had been her first love, taken from her by family pressure and circumstance. And her confession broke the silence of decades. "I gave my life to you, and I would never change that. But I could not leave this world without keeping the promise I once made," and her honesty revealed both sacrifice and humanity. Her daughter sobbed, "She never abandoned us, she just wanted peace," and her tears washed away some of the pain. The letter continued, "By the time you read this, I will be where my heart always longed to rest beside the sea, where Antonio waits for me." And her words painted a picture of final reunion. The eldest son finally lowered his head, broken. All these years, she carried this secret alone, and I judged her without knowing, and his remorse turned into the seed of forgiveness. The letter ended with, "Love is not betrayal. It is survival. Live without secrets, so you never repeat my mistakes," and this became the legacy she left behind. Silence filled the room as the family absorbed every word. And that silence was heavier than any argument could be. Her final wish was clear, to be remembered not for her disappearance, but for her courage to live truthfully at last. And that wish became the family's responsibility to fulfill. The family reunion, the family returned to San Andres with the letter. Neighbors gathered, hungry for gossip, but the children chose to share the truth with dignity. And their choice silenced the whispers with respect. At a gathering in their mother's home, they read the letter aloud. Some wept, others nodded in solemn silence. And the town began to see Maria not as scandal but as sacrifice. The priest admitted, perhaps she sinned in silence, but she died in truth. And that truth is greater than shame, and his words freed the family from judgment. The eldest son finally embraced his siblings, tears streaming. "I was wrong. She did not betray us. She gave us everything and still carried her own cross alone, and that moment marked the beginning of healing." The daughter smiled through tears. Now we must carry her story with honor, and her voice gave new purpose to their grief. They placed her diary on the table, not as evidence, but as legacy. And the book became a testament of both pain and wisdom. One by one, the family shared memories of Maria's laughter, her sacrifices, her quiet strength. And these stories rebuilt her image in love, not shame. Children and grandchildren promised to keep her lessons alive. And that vow turned sorrow into strength. The house that had been filled with division now echoed with reconciliation. And unity, once broken, was restored. But the greatest transformation was in the elder son's heart, who at last forgave. And his forgiveness completed Maria's journey of peace. The wisdom of age. Weeks later, the family gathered at the cliffs where Maria had last been seen. They lit candles and offered flowers to the sea. And the ritual sealed her memory in sacred beauty. The daughter read from her diary, "Wisdom is not in hiding the truth, but in living it, even when it hurts," and her words rang like a lesson for all generations present. Grandchildren asked questions, learning about their grandmother's courage. And in that teaching, the family planted seeds of resilience for the future. The town's perception shifted. Maria was no longer a woman of scandal, but a woman of dignity. And that change echoed across every household. The family began to heal not just their own wounds, but the collective wounds of silence and judgment. And healing spread like fire through the community. The eldest son finally admitted she was braver than any of us. She lived for us, and in the end, she lived for herself, and his words became the highest tribute. The sea seemed calmer that day, as if embracing the flowers and carrying them to where Maria had longed to be. And nature itself became witness to her story. The family prayed together, asking for strength to live honestly, as she had urged. And that prayer became a vow renewed. In that moment, they felt her presence not in absence, but in every heartbeat of their unity. And her legacy was alive in them. As they left, they knew Maria's truth had given them more than pain, it had given them freedom. And that freedom was her final gift.